Poor twins ask young Millionaire to be their father at school party. His response is unexpected. The bell rang loudly as the final class of the day ended at Westbrook Elementary, and the students rushed out excitedly, their backpacks bouncing. The schoolyard was decorated with colorful balloons and a large banner that read, "Family Day Celebration." There were booths with cotton candy, a small stage for performances, and signs directing families to various activities. Among the crowd, two small figures stood close together, Eva and Elias, 7-year-old twins with matching chestnut curls and oversized hand-me-down jackets. They clutched each other's hands tightly, scanning the family's gathering near the sign that said, "Family Talent Show." Their eyes searched the sea of smiling parents and waving relatives, but their own faces grew dimmer with each passing second. "We don't have anyone again this year," Eva whispered, her voice barely audible. "Everyone's gonna ask why." Elias nodded solemnly. "Unless we ask someone to be our family just for today." Eva glanced at him, confused, until Elias pointed toward the parking lot. A sleek black car pulled up, and out stepped a tall man in a sharp navy blue suit. He adjusted his sunglasses and scanned the crowd with the confidence of someone who didn't often belong in such ordinary places. "That's him," Elias said. "That's Mr. Carter. He lives in the big glass house across the field." Eva's eyes widened. Everyone in their tiny town knew of Nathaniel Carter, the young tech millionaire who had recently moved in. He was a mystery, never seen at town events, rarely spoken to, and known for keeping to himself. Yet here he was, standing near the school gate checking his watch. "What if he says no?" Eva asked. "What if he says yes?" Elias answered with a grin. Before Eva could argue, Elias tugged her along. They weaved through the crowd, dodging bouncing balloons and curious glances, until they stood just a few feet from Nathaniel. The man glanced down at them, his brow raising slightly at the sight of the two tiny kids staring up at him so seriously. "Excuse me, sir," Elias began, his voice strong. "We don't have a dad, not one that comes to parties anyway. So, we were wondering, just for today, would you be our dad?" Nathaniel blinked, caught completely off guard. "I'm sorry, and what?" Eva chimed in, her voice shaking but sincere. "Just for the family party. We'll be good, we promise. We just don't want to be alone again." A silence settled between them. People nearby had begun to notice. A few parents looked over, whispering. Nathaniel stared at the twins, their hopeful faces filled with something he hadn't seen in years, raw, unfiltered need. And for a reason he couldn't explain, something in his chest stirred. "I don't even know your names," he said softly. "I'm Elias, this is my sister, Eva." He hesitated for another beat, then finally Nathaniel knelt down and said, "All right, just for today." Eva's face lit up, Elias beamed, and as they each took one of Nathaniel's hands, neither of them saw the expression of deep confusion forming on his face, as if something about them was hauntingly familiar. Nathaniel walked through the crowded schoolyard with the twins holding tightly to his hands, a surreal sense of displacement washing over him. Children ran past them laughing, music played faintly from a nearby speaker, and teachers greeted parents with warm smiles. But Nathaniel's mind was elsewhere. His grip on their small hands tightened ever so slightly. "How long have you two been at this school?" he asked, glancing down. "Since kindergarten," Eva replied proudly. "Ms. Lorna says we're very polite, sometimes too quiet," Elias added with a shrug. Nathaniel nodded, his jaw tense. He couldn't place it. What was it about these kids that made something inside him twist? Their eyes, maybe. Hazel, flecked with amber, familiar, uncomfortably so. He shook the thought away. It didn't matter. He was just doing a good deed, playing pretend for a day. No strings. As they reached the art pavilion, Eva tugged on his arm. "We made drawings for Family Day." "Want to see?" "Sure," Nathaniel replied, his voice more gentle than he intended. The twins ran ahead to a makeshift display taped to a wall. There, in crayon and markers, were dozens of child-drawn portraits of families, Moms, dads, siblings, even pets. One stood out. It was scribbled in bold colors. 2 small kids holding the hands of a tall man in a blue suit. The title above it, "The Dad We Wished For." Nathaniel stared at it, stunned. "You drew this before today?" he asked slowly. Elias nodded. "We've been drawing it every year." Eva added, "We always imagine someone kind who smiles but also who walks tall. Like you." Nathaniel's throat went dry. "Why me?" Eva tilted her head, as if trying to understand why he didn't get it. "You're alone, like us." Those words, so simple, sliced through his armor. Nathaniel looked around. He noticed the glances from other adults now, curious, judgmental. A woman whispered to a man, clearly speculating. He felt exposed, like he'd stepped into a spotlight he hadn't agreed to. Still, the twins didn't notice. They beamed as they showed him their other drawings, of birthday cakes with missing candles, of a small apartment above a grocery store, of dreams they never voiced aloud. "Do you live with your mum?" Nathaniel asked gently. They both looked down. Elias spoke first. "She's busy, works a lot. Sometimes she forgets dinner," Eva whispered. "But we help each other. We're a team." A silence fell again. Nathaniel looked at their thin jackets, 2 small shoes, the careful way they held themselves. These weren't kids who asked for much, but today they'd asked him for everything they secretly longed for, and he'd said yes. Before he could respond, a voice rang through the loudspeakers. "All families, please gather at the stage. The children will now introduce their special guests," Eva gasped. "That's you. You have to come with us now." Nathaniel blinked. "Wait, what?" Elias grabbed his hand. "Come on, Dad." And with no chance to escape, Nathaniel Carter was led toward the stage, toward a spotlight he never expected, by 2 children he couldn't stop thinking about. The stage was decorated with paper hearts, cut-out stars, and colorful streamers fluttering in the summer breeze. Rows of folding chairs were filled with families, mothers brushing crumbs off their children's shirts, fathers with cameras ready. Nathaniel stood behind the curtain, knees slightly bent as if preparing to flee. But Eva and Elias stood confidently beside him, their tiny hands gripping his sleeves. A teacher stepped up to the microphone. "Welcome to Westbrook Elementary's Family Day Talent Show. Each student will introduce their special guest, someone they love, someone they admire, or someone who inspires them." Applause echoed. Nathaniel's heart pounded in his chest. "You sure about this?" he asked in a low voice. Eva gave him a firm nod. "We picked you." Elias grinned. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to our family day." The curtain parted slightly as the announcer called, "Next we have Elias and Eva." The twins stepped forward, pulling Nathaniel with them. The audience clapped politely as the children approached the microphone. Eva took a deep breath, clearly nervous, but determined. "Hi," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "This is our special guest. His name is Mr. Carter. He's really smart and kind, and he said yes when we asked him to be our dad for the day." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people chuckled, a few whispered. Nathaniel felt the weight of 100 eyes. Elias took over. "We don't really have a dad who comes to school things. Our mum works a lot, so we decided to be brave and ask someone. And Mr. Carter was brave too because he didn't know us, but he said yes anyway." Nathaniel looked out at the sea of faces, then down at the twins. He cleared his throat and took a step forward. "I didn't plan to be here today. Honestly, I just came to drop off a donation and leave. But these 2, he smiled, "they changed my plans." The audience quieted. Nathaniel continued. "They reminded me what it means to show up even when it's unexpected, and they reminded me how much courage it takes to ask for something you really need." A hush settled over the room. Even the skeptical faces began to soften. He looked at Eva and Elias. "Thank you for asking me." The room erupted in warm applause. As they left the stage, Nathaniel felt something shift inside him. The applause wasn't for him. It was for them, for their bravery, their open hearts. But a strange sensation lingered in his chest. Pride, yes, but also confusion. Because the moment Elias turned to flash a proud smile up at him, Nathaniel saw it again, something deep in the boy's eyes, a flicker of recognition, of resemblance. It was ridiculous, coincidence. Except Elias's dimpled smile matched his own. Nathaniel's pulse quickened. "What did you say your last name was again?" he asked casually. Eva replied, "Green." And that name made Nathaniel's stomach drop. He hadn't heard it in years, but it was unmistakably tied to a chapter in his past he thought was closed forever. "Green," Nathaniel repeated under his breath, his voice nearly inaudible. The name echoed in his mind like an old song he hadn't heard in years. He watched the twins run ahead laughing, their giggles mixing with the music and chatter of the festival. He followed slowly, lost in thought. 12 years ago, there had been a woman. Her name was Lydia Green. They'd met one summer during a startup retreat in Austin. She was beautiful, bright-eyed, a graphic designer with dreams bigger than the city could hold. They'd only been together for a few months, a passionate whirlwind that ended too abruptly when Nathaniel received a funding offer that required him to move across the country. They hadn't spoken since. He paused near a booth selling lemonade. Could it really be the same Green? It wasn't an uncommon name, but those eyes, the shape of Elias's jawline, the tone of Eva's voice when she said, "We're a team." It all tugged at something buried deep in him. Suddenly he felt a tap on his back. He turned to see a woman standing awkwardly, nervously wringing her hands. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she wore a worn-out sweater despite the heat. But her eyes, green, sharp, and filled with recognition, were unmistakable. "Lydia," he breathed. She gave a faint smile. "I was wondering how long it'd take you to figure it out." Nathaniel felt his throat tighten. "They're yours?" he asked, though the answer was now painfully obvious. "They're ours," she corrected softly. The word slammed into him like a wave. He looked at her, stunned. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lydia exhaled slowly. "Because you were building an empire. Because you left without looking back. Because I didn't think you'd want to know. And when I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't going to chase you down. I made peace with raising them on my own." Nathaniel shook his head. "You should have told me." "Maybe," she said, her voice tinged with both regret and quiet defiance. "But I did what I thought was best at the time." He turned away for a moment, trying to process the rush of emotions. He had children, twins, 7 years old. Their faces, their voices, their small hands wrapped in his that morning. It all replayed in his mind like a reel from someone else's life. "I didn't come here to throw this at you," Lydia continued. "They don't know. I never told them about you. They saw you once through a shop window last week. They asked your name, and when I told them, they just lit up. I didn't stop them from dreaming." Nathaniel turned back slowly. "So this wasn't your plan?" Lydia shook her head. "They did this on their own." The heaviness in his chest grew. He looked over to where the twins were now painting paper lanterns, blissfully unaware of the conversation unfolding just steps away. "They're incredible," he said quietly. Lydia smiled again, this time with a flicker of sadness. "They are." Nathaniel swallowed hard. "Lydia, what happens now?" Lydia looked down, unsure of how to answer. The schoolyard buzzed around them, full of laughter and celebration, but she and Nathaniel stood frozen in a bubble of silence. She crossed her arms, more from emotional protection than the breeze that stirred the air. "I don't know," she admitted. "I wasn't prepared for this." Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair, his gaze fixed on the twins. Eva was now holding up her lantern to the sun, admiring how the light shone through her drawing. Elias had paint on his cheeks, grinning proudly. Nathaniel couldn't stop staring. Every expression, every movement. They weren't just beautiful, they were familiar. "I missed everything," he murmured. "You didn't know," Lydia replied gently, but there was a flicker of pain behind her eyes. "And I didn't give you the chance to." Nathaniel turned to her. "I want to know them, Lydia, if you'll let me. I'm not the same guy I was back then. I was selfish, sure, but I never would have walked away from this. Lydia hesitated. They're sensitive. They don't trust easily. I've worked so hard to make them feel safe, even when things were tight, especially when they asked about a dad. I get it, he said, his voice steady now. I won't just walk in and blow up their world, but I'm not walking away either. A long pause stretched between them, heavy with unsaid words. Finally, Lydia nodded once. Okay. We'll take it slow. Just then, Elias came sprinting over, breathless. Mr. Carter, you have to see the rockets we made. Eva followed, dragging a tiny cardboard model. They fly if the wind is strong. Nathaniel crouched, forcing a smile. I wouldn't miss it. The twins beamed as they tugged him toward the science display, unaware that everything was different now, that the man holding their hands wasn't just playing pretend anymore. Lydia watched from a distance. Her chest ached with uncertainty. She had raised them with all the love she had, built a life out of nothing, sacrificed everything to keep them safe. And now, suddenly, he was here, rich, polished, ready. She wasn't sure if that made her relieved or terrified. As Nathaniel helped Elias launch a tiny rocket into the air, it soared high, catching the wind just right. The children cheered, and in that moment, Nathaniel laughed. A real laugh, deep and unguarded. Lydia's breath caught. It was the same laugh from all those years ago. She turned away, biting her lip, because what the twins didn't know, what she had never told anyone, was that she hadn't just left Nathaniel out of their lives. She had kept a truth hidden, buried under years of fear and pride. A truth that could shatter everything again, if it ever came out. The sun had begun to dip behind the trees, casting golden streaks of light across the schoolyard. As the family day festivities wound down, Nathaniel lingered near the exit gate, his blazer slung over his shoulder and his mind racing. He watched Lydia gather the twins' backpacks, speaking softly to them as they packed up their crafts and half-eaten snacks. From a distance, they looked like a family, one he didn't know he was missing until a few hours ago. When Lydia looked up and met his eyes, something passed between them, an unspoken agreement, a fragile truce. She gave a small nod, then approached him with Eva and Elias in tow. Hey, she said, her voice more casual now, trying to make this transition seem smooth for the kids. We're about to head home. You want to walk with us? Nathaniel hesitated only a second before nodding. Yeah, I'd like that. Elias bounced beside him. Our apartment is behind Ms. Marley's bakery. It smells like cinnamon every morning. Eva added, except when the oven breaks. Then it smells like smoke. Nathaniel chuckled. Sounds cozy. As they walked together down the quiet sidewalk, past weathered fences and cracked pavement, he stole glances at Lydia. She looked tired, bone-deep tired, but there was a grace in the way she carried herself. The weight of years had settled on her shoulders, but not her spirit. How long have you been back here? He asked. 6 years, she replied. Moved in when the twins were about 1. My parents passed away, and I needed somewhere familiar. Nathaniel nodded slowly. You didn't reach out. I didn't think I had the right to, she said quietly, without looking at him. The twins ran ahead toward a building with a faded green door and a crooked mailbox. Home, sweet home, Elias called out. Nathaniel followed them up the steps, standing awkwardly at the threshold as Lydia unlocked the door. Inside, the space was small but warm. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, and mismatched furniture gave the place a lived-in charm. Toys were tucked into corners, drawings taped to the fridge, and 2 small beds occupied the far wall of the living room. You can sit, Lydia said, gesturing to the couch. If you want. Nathaniel lowered himself onto the cushions, watching as Eva climbed onto a stool and began pouring juice into tiny plastic cups. Elias was already rummaging through a drawer for cookies. It was domestic, simple, and it hit him harder than he expected. Do they ever ask about their father? He asked cautiously. Lydia sat across from him. Only in the abstract. I always said he was someone from a long time ago, someone who wasn't ready. Nathaniel's throat tightened. And now? She looked him in the eye. Now they think they've found him. He stared at her, feeling the full weight of what that meant, of what he'd already stepped into. He wasn't just a visitor now, not to them. And deep down, he wasn't sure he wanted to leave. That night, after the twins had fallen asleep curled up together in their small bed, Eva clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, Elias still wearing one shoe, Nathaniel remained seated on the worn couch, lost in silence. Lydia stood at the window, arms folded across her chest, watching the quiet street below. She finally broke the silence. They've never fallen asleep that fast after a school event. Nathaniel glanced toward the bedroom, a faint smile tugging at his lips. They had a big day. Lydia turned to face him, her expression soft but guarded. They like you. I like them too, he said without hesitation. She hesitated a moment, then walked over and sat on the edge of the couch, leaving a careful distance between them. You said earlier that you're not the same guy anymore. What did you mean? Nathaniel leaned back, his eyes drifting to the ceiling. I chased success like it was oxygen, startup after startup, investment after investment, made a fortune, lost a few friends, gave everything to my company until I realized I had no one to share it with. He turned to her. I thought I was building something that mattered, but today, standing on that stage with them, I realized what I missed. Lydia listened in silence, her fingers fidgeting with a loose thread on the couch. You sound different. I feel different, he said. Meeting them, it changed something, or maybe it woke something up that I buried a long time ago. She looked at him then, truly looked, and he saw something flicker behind her eyes, fear, hope, maybe both. I can't promise this will be easy, she said quietly. I've spent years doing this on my own. I don't know how to let someone in, especially someone who left without a word. Nathaniel lowered his voice. I didn't know you were pregnant, Lydia. If I had... I know, she interrupted, gently but firmly. But it doesn't change what happened, or what didn't. He nodded, accepting the truth of it. They sat in silence for a moment before he asked, would it be all right if I saw them again? Maybe take them out next weekend, just for a few hours? She hesitated, then gave a cautious nod. We'll start slow. If they want to, we can arrange something. Thank you, he said. She rose, smoothing out her sweater. You should get some rest. It's late. Nathaniel stood, glancing once more toward the bedroom. I'll go. But Lydia, she paused, hand on the doorknob, I want to be in their lives, not just today, not just next week, for real. Her breath caught. That's a big promise. I know, he said softly, but I mean it. She didn't reply, just gave a small nod, then opened the door. As he stepped out into the cool night, the weight of everything that had shifted hung heavily on his shoulders. But inside Lydia's heart, a storm was building, because the secret she still held could upend all of it. A secret she'd vowed never to speak aloud. The next morning, the apartment was filled with the scent of frying eggs and burnt toast. Lydia stood at the stove, hair still tousled from sleep, absently flipping a pancake while her mind reeled from the previous day. Across the room, Ava sat at the table coloring, and Elias balanced a spoon on his nose, giggling. Mom, Eva asked, not looking up from her drawing, is Mr. Carter going to come back? Lydia paused, spatula in hand. Do you want him to? Eva nodded immediately. He makes me feel special. Me too, Elias chimed in. And he laughed at my rocket, even though it didn't fly that far. Lydia turned back to the stove, swallowing a lump in her throat. She had seen this coming. The attachment, the excitement, and she'd allowed it. A small part of her hoped it might bring something good into their lives, maybe even healing. But the other part, fearful, cautious, kept reminding her of the lie she'd let grow for 7 years. Nathaniel wasn't just any man. He was their biological father, but he didn't know that. Not really, not officially. And if he found out how she'd hidden it, how she'd kept him from knowing his own children, would he forgive her? Later that day, while the twins played outside with chalk and a neighbor's scooter, Lydia sat alone on the edge of her bed. She opened the bottom drawer of her nightstand and pulled out an old envelope, worn, yellowed at the corners. Inside was a letter, unsent, dated 7 years ago. Nathaniel, I don't expect you to understand, but I need to say this. I'm pregnant, and I'm scared. You're chasing something too fast for me to follow, and I can't risk watching you walk away again. So I'm going. Please don't look for me. Please let this be my decision. Lydia. She hadn't mailed it. Had never even finished writing the second page. Instead, she'd left Austin in the middle of the night with 2 suitcases, a secret growing inside her, and the stubborn belief that she'd survive on her own. A knock at the door startled her. She quickly tucked the envelope back and rushed to answer. Standing there, holding a small brown bag, was Nathaniel. I brought croissants, he said. Figured I owed you for the juice and cookies. Lydia blinked. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He stepped inside cautiously, scanning the small apartment like he was still unsure of his place in it. Eva rushed in from the balcony. You came back. I told you I would, Nathaniel said, kneeling to hug her. Elias barreled into him a second later, and for a moment Lydia watched in stunned silence as the man she'd once loved, whom she had hidden so much from, held her children like he'd always belonged there. And she knew the clock was ticking. The truth couldn't stay hidden much longer. Nathaniel spent the afternoon with the twins, crouched on the balcony as they colored chalk drawings across the concrete. He let them take turns climbing onto his back like a horse, endured a very chaotic tea party with plastic cups, and even agreed to wear a crown made of pipe cleaners. Lydia watched from the kitchen window, her stomach churning, not from jealousy or regret, but from the quiet ache of knowing something huge and irreversible hovered just beyond this fragile peace. After the twins had settled for a nap, Eva snuggled under a blanket, Elias drooling on the couch, Nathaniel stood in the narrow kitchen, washing his hands. Lydia handed him a towel. Their fingers brushed, and it was as if the air thickened between them. You're good with them, she said softly. I'm trying, he replied, drying his hands. Feels like trying to learn a new language I should have spoken all along. She nodded, unable to argue with that. He leaned against the counter. I've been thinking, what if I set up a trust for their education, and maybe cover some of the expenses now? I don't want to overstep. Lydia raised a hand, cutting him off. Nathaniel, slow down. His brow furrowed. I just want to help. I know, and I believe you. But this isn't something we can solve with money. I didn't mean... I know you didn't, she interrupted again, this time more gently. But what they need most isn't a trust fund. It's consistency. It's knowing you'll show up next weekend, and the one after that. He looked away for a moment, jaw tightening. I will, he said, voice steady. She hesitated, then asked, Why are you really doing this? Is it guilt? Obligation? His eyes snapped back to hers. It's them. It's the way Eva tilts her head when she's listening, the way Elias clenches his fists when he's excited. It's knowing something inside me belongs to them, even if I don't have a name for it yet. Her breath caught. He was getting closer to the truth than she'd anticipated. She turned and busied herself at the sink. You should go. Let them rest. It's been a long weekend. Nathaniel hesitated. Will you think about what I said? About helping? She nodded. I will. He walked to the door, hand on the knob. I'm not giving up, Lydia. Whatever this is, I'm all in. And then he was gone. Lydia stood in the quiet apartment, the ticking clock on the wall suddenly unbearably loud. Her heart pounded. Because even though she'd tried to stay silent, the truth was rising like a tide. And it was no longer just about protecting the past. It was about preparing for the moment Nathaniel would look into her eyes, demanding to know why he had been kept from his children for 7 years. And what else she hadn't told him. Later that evening, after the kids had fallen into a deep post-play exhaustion and the apartment was quiet, Lydia found herself pacing. The envelope was back in her hand, creased and worn, a symbol of every choice she'd made and every consequence that followed. She knew she couldn't keep walking the line between truth and silence. Nathaniel wasn't some fleeting figure anymore. He was here, changing their lives already. And whether she was ready or not, he deserved to know. She sat at the small kitchen table, the letter before her, her phone beside it. After several deep breaths, she picked up the phone and texted him. "Lydia, can we talk tomorrow? Just you and me." The response came within minutes. "Nathaniel, of course. Name the time and place." She stared at the screen, her fingers trembling. "Lydia, there's something I need to tell you." No reply came this time, but she didn't need one. He would come. The next morning, Lydia waited at a small cafe near the park, her coffee untouched. The old letter was folded neatly in her bag, though she wasn't sure she'd use it. When Nathaniel arrived, he looked tired but steady, a man bracing for impact. "Thanks for meeting me," she said as he sat across from her. "Of course," he said quietly. "You seemed serious." She nodded, taking a breath. "There's no easy way to say this, but I owe you the truth." Nathaniel leaned in slightly. "All right." Lydia exhaled. "Ava and Elias, they're yours." The world seemed to stop. He blinked. "What?" "They're your biological children, Nathaniel." Silence. Lydia went on quickly. "I didn't tell you when I found out. I was scared, I was hurt. You were leaving and I didn't want to trap you. I convinced myself it was better this way, that I was protecting everyone." Nathaniel's jaw clenched, his eyes darkened, not with rage but something heavier, betrayal, disbelief, pain. "You lied to me," he said, barely above a whisper. "I didn't lie," she said, her voice cracking. "I just didn't tell you, and I regret that every single day. But I never wanted to keep them from you out of spite. I didn't think you'd want to be involved." Nathaniel pushed back in his chair, his breath shaky. He looked out the window as if grounding himself. "I've missed 7 years," he said, voice hollow. "First words, first steps, every birthday, I missed everything." Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I'm so sorry." He stood abruptly. "I need time. I don't know what I need." "Nathaniel," but he was already walking out, the bell above the cafe door chiming as it swung closed behind him. Lydia sat frozen, her heart in shards, because the truth had finally been spoken, and now everything they'd begun to build might collapse beneath the weight of it. Nathaniel didn't remember the drive home. The city passed in a blur of traffic lights and muted noise, his thoughts loud enough to drown out everything else. By the time he reached his sleek glass-walled home, the sun was high, but he felt submerged in cold shadow. He walked into the foyer and dropped his keys on the marble counter with a clatter. Everything around him was pristine, polished floors, custom furniture, modern art, but it all felt hollow now. For years he had filled his life with success, power and convenience, building a fortress to protect himself from loss and uncertainty. Now, he realized, he had been shielding himself from something he never knew was missing: family. He stood at the edge of the living room, staring at the cityscape beyond the windows. Lydia's words echoed in his mind. "They're yours." He'd replayed them dozens of times, and each time the weight grew heavier. Anger flickered within him, not just at Lydia but at himself, for not knowing, for not seeing, for all the moments with Eva and Elias that had come and gone, while he chased something that now felt meaningless. The doorbell rang. Startled, he turned and walked to the door. When he opened it, he found Marissa, his assistant, standing there with a file in her hands. "I was in the neighborhood," she said. "I figured you'd want these documents before the Monday meeting." He nodded, distracted. "Thanks." But she didn't leave. "You all right?" she asked gently. Nathaniel stared at her for a beat, then shook his head. "No." Marissa stepped inside, setting the folder on the counter. "Do you want to talk about it?" He considered brushing her off, but something in him broke open. "I have kids," he said, his voice rough. 7-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. Marissa's eyebrows lifted, but she said nothing, allowing him to continue. I didn't know. Their mother never told me. I found out yesterday, and I don't know what to do. Marissa sat down slowly on one of the bar stools. Do you want to be in their lives? I already am, he said. They asked me to pretend to be their dad for a school event. I said yes. I thought I was just helping out for a day. But the second I looked at them, God, Marissa, they're mine. I saw it, felt it. And now? He sighed, rubbing his face. Now I'm furious. But I can't stop thinking about them. I don't want to lose them. Marissa gave him a long, measured look. Then don't. He looked at her, lost. You're not powerless here, she said. They know you, they love you already. You just have to decide if you're willing to fight for them, even if you're hurt. Nathaniel stared down at his hands. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure what the next move should be, but he knew one thing. He couldn't walk away. That evening, Lydia sat curled on the couch with a worn blanket pulled around her shoulders. The television played a cartoon the twins had long since fallen asleep to, their little bodies sprawled in tangled positions on the floor. She should have carried them to bed, but she couldn't move. Not yet. Her phone buzzed. She hesitated before reaching for it, already knowing who it was. Nathaniel, can we talk? Not tomorrow. Tonight. She stared at the screen, then slowly typed back. Lydia, they're asleep, but you can come by if you want. The reply came instantly. Nathaniel, be there in 10. Lydia stood quickly, heart pounding. She tiptoed over the twins, tucked a pillow beneath Elias's head, and turned off the TV. Then she moved to the kitchen, lit the soft under-cabinet lights, and tried to steady her breathing. When the knock came, it was gentle. She opened the door to find Nathaniel there, dressed in a hoodie and jeans, his hair tousled from the wind, but his eyes were different, still stormy, still hurt, but clearer, like he'd made some kind of internal decision. Hi, she whispered. Hi, he said back. They stepped into the quiet kitchen. The soft hum of the fridge filled the space between them. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Nathaniel broke the silence. Why didn't you tell me? Lydia swallowed hard. Because I was scared. Because I didn't want to be the woman who derailed your life. You had everything in front of you, and I didn't know how to be part of that world. But you decided for me, he said, not angry, just honest. She nodded. I did. And I was wrong? Nathaniel exhaled slowly, staring at the floor. You didn't even give me a chance, Lydia. I could have loved them from the beginning. A tear slipped down her cheek. I know. He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his posture shifted. His anger didn't vanish, but it softened. They're amazing, she smiled faintly. They are. I don't want to lose them. I want to be in their lives, really in them, not as some guest at the table. Lydia nodded. I want that too. But you'll need to earn their trust, not with money, not even with words, with time. I will, he said quietly. They stood there in silence again until Lydia reached into a drawer and pulled out the envelope, the old letter she'd never sent. I wrote this years ago, never mailed it, but it says everything I was too afraid to say. Nathaniel took it, his fingers brushing hers, and opened it slowly. As he read, his jaw tightened and his shoulders dropped. When he looked up, his voice was rough. I would have come. She nodded, her eyes glassy. I believe that now. He looked toward the twins, asleep on the floor like little angels. I missed so much, he whispered. But it's not too late, Lydia said, stepping closer. They already love you. You just have to keep showing up. He looked at her, heart heavy, and somewhere deep inside, a fragile hope began to take root. The following week became a slow rhythm of cautious rebuilding. Nathaniel began spending afternoons with the twins, reading books on the balcony, helping Elias with math homework, and braiding Eva's hair as she giggled through his clumsy attempts. Lydia watched it unfold like a dream she never allowed herself to hope for, and yet now it was real, tangible. One evening, while Lydia was at a shift in the small bookstore where she worked part-time, Nathaniel brought the twins to his home for the first time. Their eyes grew wide the moment they stepped into the towering foyer. "Whoa," Elias breathed. "Is this a hotel?" Ava pointed at the crystal chandelier. "Do you live here every day?" Nathaniel smiled. "It's not as exciting as it looks." They explored every corner of the modern space, marveling at the elevator, the rooftop garden, and the touch-screen fridge that showed pictures of last week's groceries. In the living room, Nathaniel let them jump on the giant sectional couch while he prepared snacks. When he returned with a tray of fruit and cookies, he found the twins snuggled under a throw blanket, whispering to each other. As he handed them their plates, Eva looked up at him and said, "Does this mean we get to have two homes now?" Nathaniel's heart twisted. He knelt beside her. "You already have a home with your mum. This place, it's just where we'll make memories too. If that's okay." She nodded seriously. "It is." Elias leaned over. "Can we bring our sleeping bags next time?" Nathaniel smiled. "Absolutely." After they fell asleep, Elias sprawled out across the couch. Eva curled up under his arm. Nathaniel stood alone by the window, gazing out at the glittering skyline. He thought about everything he'd missed. The nights they cried for their mother, the birthdays celebrated with a single cupcake, the tiny moments that made up their world. And still, somehow they welcomed him in with open hearts. He'd never known such forgiveness could exist. When Lydia arrived to pick them up, she found them asleep under a pile of pillows. Nathaniel looked exhausted, but peaceful. "They had fun," he said softly. She nodded. "They're already asking when they can come back." He hesitated, then asked, "Is it okay if I keep seeing them like this? Regular visits?" Lydia smiled gently. "It's more than okay. It's what they need." He exhaled, visibly relieved, but as she turned to wake the twins, something stopped her. She looked back at him, her face serious now. "There's one more thing you need to know," she said. Nathaniel tensed. "What is it?" She hesitated. "I didn't just choose to raise them alone out of fear. I did it because someone else told me to." Nathaniel blinked. "What?" She took a deep breath. "Someone close to you, back then. They convinced me you'd never want the kids. That you'd see them as a mistake." His stomach dropped. "Who?" he asked. Lydia's eyes met his. "Your mother." The silence that followed Lydia's revelation was thick, almost unbearable. Nathaniel stood frozen, his mind reeling, unable to process what she had just said. "My mother," he repeated, as if saying the words out loud would make them make sense. Lydia nodded slowly. "I didn't want to believe it either, but she reached out to me just days after you left Austin. Said she'd found out about the pregnancy through a mutual acquaintance. She offered me money, told me I'd ruin your future, said you were under too much pressure already, that it would destroy everything you were building." Nathaniel sank into a chair, his face pale. "And you listened to her?" "I was scared, Nathaniel. 23. Alone. And she made me feel like keeping the twins would be a burden not just on you, but on them. Like they'd be better off without your world." His jaw clenched. "She never said a word. Not once, all these years. She told me you were already involved with someone else, that you'd moved on." "That wasn't true. I know that now. But then, I was drowning, and she made it seem like walking away was the only way to give them peace." Nathaniel put his head in his hands. He could feel the betrayal blooming inside him like a wildfire. His mother, his most trusted advisor, the one person he'd allowed close even as he built walls around everything else, had decided without a word to sever the most important connection of his life. He looked up at Lydia. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't think you'd believe me, and I didn't want to reopen that pain, not when I was finally healing. And now?" Lydia swallowed hard. "Now you're in their lives. Now it matters more than ever that everything is honest." Nathaniel stood, running a hand through his hair. "She's been calling me for days. I've been ignoring her." "She probably knows you found out." He nodded. She always did hate surprises. Lydia stepped closer. I'm not telling you this to make things worse. I'm telling you because if we're going to make this work for them, we have to stop hiding. He looked at her, eyes shadowed but focused. You're right, and I need to hear it from her. Lydia nodded. I understand. As they turned to gently wake the twins for the ride home, Nathaniel's mind was already racing. His mother had shaped every major decision in his life, except this one, and now he had a decision of his own to make, to confront the woman who raised him, or to protect the new family just beginning to grow in his heart. The next morning, Nathaniel sat alone in his home office, the early light casting long shadows through the tall windows. His coffee had gone cold. His phone lay on the desk untouched, until he finally reached for it and dialed a number he hadn't called in weeks. It rang 3 times before his mother's voice answered. Nathaniel, she said, her tone cool and composed as ever. You've been avoiding me. I've been busy, he replied flatly. With what? She asked. That school event I heard about? Someone mentioned you were spotted on stage, with 2 children. So she already knew. I wasn't spotted. I was invited by my children. There was a pause on the other end. I see, she said carefully. So Lydia told you? Yes, he said, his voice sharp now. She told me everything. A longer pause. I did what I thought was best, his mother said. You were on the verge of your first major investor deal. That kind of distraction. They're not a distraction, he cut in. They're my kids. You convinced Lydia to disappear. You took that choice away from me. I protected you. No, he said firmly. You controlled me. His mother's voice turned brittle. You were too young, too focused. You had a future most men only dream of. And I would have traded every dime of it to be there the first time Eva smiled, to see Elias walk. You took that from me. A silence hung between them, colder than anything they'd ever shared. I didn't mean harm, she said at last. But you did harm, he replied, his voice low, steady. And you don't get to rewrite that. I assume this means she's letting you back into their lives, she asked, her tone softening with a hint of something, jealousy, fear. She's giving me a chance, and I'm taking it, fully. That includes protecting them, even if it means protecting them from you. His mother didn't respond right away. I'm your mother, Nathaniel, she said finally, her voice trembling now. I've always done what I thought was best for you, and now I'm doing what's best for them. He hung up. The quiet in the room returned like a wave, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was clarity. Later that afternoon, Nathaniel arrived at the bookstore where Lydia worked. She was restocking shelves, humming softly to herself. When she saw him, she straightened, searching his face for answers. I talked to her, he said. Lydia nodded slowly. And? I told her the truth, that I'm choosing them, and I meant it. Something in Lydia's posture relaxed, just slightly. I want to talk to the twins, he continued. Tell them who I really am, not just a friend, not just a guest. You want to tell them you're their father, Lydia said softly. Yes. Lydia looked at him, then toward the store's back room, where a photo of Eva and Elias hung on the staff corkboard. They've waited their whole lives for someone to choose them, she whispered. Nathaniel stepped closer. Then let's stop making them wait. The sun was warm that Saturday afternoon, as Nathaniel waited on a park bench, his palms resting on his knees. The playground behind him buzzed with laughter, the scent of popcorn from a nearby vendor drifting in the air. In the distance, he spotted Lydia walking toward him, holding hands with Eva and Elias. Both children were dressed in their favorite outfits, Eva in a purple dress with glittery sneakers, Elias in a superhero hoodie and scuffed jeans. Nathaniel stood as they approached. His heart pounded like it hadn't in years. Hi, he said, managing a small smile. Hi, Lydia replied. She gave him a look, supportive, cautious, trusting. Hey, Mr. Carter. Elias grinned. We brought snacks. Eva nodded, holding up a paper bag. Gummy bears, Nathaniel chuckled. Perfect. They all sat on the bench, and Lydia gently encouraged the kids forward. Nathaniel has something important to tell you. The twins looked up, eyes wide, sensing the change in tone. Nathaniel took a breath. You know how I said I really liked spending time with you? He began, choosing his words carefully. They nodded. Well, there's a reason I felt that way right away. And it's more than just liking you. It's something special. Something real. Eva tilted her head. Like what? Nathaniel looked at Lydia for strength, then turned back to them. I'm your dad, he said gently. Not just for Family Day. I'm your real, honest-to-goodness father. The world seemed to hold its breath. Elias blinked. Wait, you mean forever? Nathaniel nodded. Forever. Ava's eyes welled up. Like, from when we were babies? Yes, Nathaniel said softly, his voice cracking. I didn't know back then. I didn't even know you existed. But now that I do, I want to be here for every day that comes next. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Elias whispered, But why didn't you come before? Nathaniel swallowed hard. Because I didn't know. Your mum had reasons. Reasons she thought were right at the time. But I'm here now, and I'll never disappear again. Eva slid off the bench and climbed into his lap without a word. She wrapped her small arms around his neck, trembling slightly. I knew it, she whispered. I knew you were our real dad. Elias leaned against him, quiet, thoughtful. I think I'm happy. But it kinda hurts too. Nathaniel held them both. It's okay to feel both. I feel the same way. Lydia watched from the side, a hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes shining with tears. She had braced for confusion, for pain, for rejection, but instead she witnessed something else entirely, acceptance, even in its messiest form. A new beginning, born from an old truth finally brought into the light, and for the first time in years, Lydia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, healing was possible. Over the next few weeks, a quiet transformation unfolded in their lives. It wasn't sudden, nor without bumps, but it was steady, tender moments stitched into ordinary days. Nathaniel began picking up the twins from school twice a week. The first time he walked through the doors of Westbrook Elementary, Ava sprinted into his arms with such joy, the principal turned to Lydia and murmured, That man just became someone's hero. At home, Nathaniel created a drawer filled with their favorite snacks. He installed a bunk bed in one of his guest rooms, complete with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Elias dubbed it our space station. Eva brought her art supplies, claiming the guest bathroom mirror as her gallery. One evening, as they gathered for dinner at Nathaniel's place, Lydia included, Elias asked a question between bites of spaghetti. Do we get your last name now? Nathaniel nearly dropped his fork. He looked at Lydia, who gave a small nod. If you want that, Nathaniel said carefully, we can talk about it. It's something we'd all need to agree on. Eva tilted her head. Can we be Green Carter? Nathaniel smiled. That sounds perfect. The paperwork would come later, but the emotional commitment had already been made. It was the kind of moment Nathaniel never thought he'd experience. One rooted not in performance or power, but in connection, in love. Still, the shadows hadn't fully lifted. That Sunday, as Lydia helped clean up after dinner, Nathaniel stood beside her in the kitchen, rinsing dishes. I've been thinking, he said, about everything you told me, about my mother. Lydia froze for a second, then resumed drying a plate. What about it? I need to see her, he said quietly. Not to fight, not to yell, but to make her face what she did. Not for me, for them. Lydia looked over, cautious. Do you think she'll admit it? I don't know, he said. But I can't carry that silence anymore. Not if I want to raise them without lies. She placed the dish towel down. Then I'll support you, whatever comes of it. Nathaniel nodded. Later that night, after he'd walked them to their car and kissed the twins goodnight, Lydia lingered by the driver's side door. She looked up at him, uncertain. "They love you," she said. "I love them too." Her voice softened. "And me?" The question was so quiet, it nearly disappeared into the breeze. Nathaniel didn't answer right away. He simply leaned in, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and kissed her forehead. "I never stopped," he whispered. Lydia closed her eyes, holding back tears. But as they drove away, neither of them noticed the car parked across the street. Inside, Nathaniel's mother sat behind the wheel, her face expressionless, watching the scene she never imagined witnessing. And in her lap lay an old photograph. A young Nathaniel and Lydia, smiling, unaware of the storm that would come. She closed her eyes, and finally, for the first time, she felt the weight of what she'd done. The next morning, Nathaniel stood in front of a grand stone townhouse tucked in the city's historic district. It was the house he'd grown up in, a place that once symbolized security, achievement, and legacy. Now, as he climbed the steps and rang the bell, it felt more like the mouth of a storm. The door opened to reveal his mother, Eleanor Carter, still composed in her silk blouse and pearls, her silver hair swept back in a perfect bun. "Nathaniel," she said, her expression unreadable. "Mom," he replied, keeping his voice even. She stepped aside to let him in, and he walked past the entry hall, noticing how little had changed. The same oil paintings, the same crystal bowl on the foyer table. Everything was untouched, frozen even, as if time hadn't dared move forward here. They sat in the sunroom, and for a long moment neither spoke. Finally, Nathaniel broke the silence. "I talked to Lydia. She told me everything." His mother folded her hands in her lap. "I see. Do you deny it?" Eleanor's gaze didn't waver. "No." Nathaniel's chest tightened. "So it's true. You knew she was pregnant. You paid her to disappear." "I didn't pay her. I offered help. A way to avoid dragging you down when you were finally rising." "You had no right," he snapped, standing abruptly. "You took that from me, my children, my choice." Eleanor looked away, her voice strained. "I did what I thought was best. You were young, Nathaniel. You were finally becoming something. I saw what pressure did to your father, how family obligations suffocated him. I didn't want that for you." Nathaniel stared at her. "You didn't protect me. You punished me for something beautiful. And you hurt them, Eva and Elias, before they even knew who you were." Eleanor flinched. "For you could have had grandchildren," he continued. "You could have known them from day one. Instead, you sat in silence and watched me walk through life believing I was alone." A flicker of emotion crossed her face, regret, perhaps, or something too tangled to define. "I thought I was saving you," she said, voice thin. "No," Nathaniel replied, his voice clear, steady. "You were saving yourself, from the mess, from the risk of a son who made a human choice." He walked toward the door, pausing before opening it. "I'm building something now that you'll never control. A family, one based on truth, and whether you're part of it or not, that's no longer your decision." Eleanor stood slowly. "Can I meet them?" Nathaniel turned halfway, his gaze cool. "One day, when I believe you understand what it means to show up without conditions." He left her standing in the sunroom, surrounded by the sterile beauty she'd chosen over love. Outside, the air felt different, brighter. Nathaniel stepped into the sunlight with a single thought ringing in his heart. They're not going to grow up with silence, not like I did. That evening, Nathaniel returned to Lydia's apartment, his presence quieter than usual. The twins greeted him with their usual enthusiasm, Elias tackling him at the knees, Eva showing off a crayon drawing of the three of them standing under a rainbow. But Lydia saw the tension in Nathaniel's jaw, the way his eyes avoided hers at first. She waited until the kids were distracted with a puzzle on the floor before she joined him on the balcony, where he stood gazing out at the dusky skyline. "You saw her," Lydia said softly. He nodded. "And?" Nathaniel exhaled. "She didn't deny it. She said she thought she was protecting me, from you, from the kids, from growing up too fast. Lydia leaned against the railing beside him. She's always been like that. She asked to meet them, he said. Lydia turned her head sharply. What did you say? I told her she'd have to earn that right, that she needs to understand what it means to love without control. Lydia nodded slowly. Good. Nathaniel looked at her then. I don't know if she ever will. And if she doesn't? Lydia asked, searching his face. Then she won't be part of this, he said without hesitation, gesturing toward the warm light spilling from the apartment behind them. I'm not risking this. Lydia's eyes softened. You mean us? He took a breath. I do. She moved closer, so their shoulders touched. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply stood there, grounded in the new, fragile rhythm of their family, one built on truth now, not pretense. Then Lydia broke the silence. Elias asked me if he could bring you to his parent-teacher night next month. Nathaniel's face lit up. Really? He said he wants his teacher to know his dad is awesome at science and has a really cool car. Nathaniel laughed, the sound more relaxed than it had been in days. I'll be there every time, Lydia smiled. I believe you. Suddenly, a knock at the door interrupted them. They exchanged a glance. No one was expected. Lydia opened the door to find a courier holding a small package and an envelope. She signed for it and brought it inside. There was no name on the envelope, only to Lydia, in elegant handwriting. She opened it slowly, Nathaniel now at her side. Inside was a single sheet of thick stationery. The letter was handwritten in ink. Lydia, I've made many mistakes, but the one I regret most was denying you and the children a future you deserved. I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to allow me to meet them, not for my sake, but theirs. Eleanor Carter Lydia stared at the words for a long moment, then opened the box. Inside was a small velvet pouch, and inside that, a bracelet. Delicate, gold, inscribed with two names, Eva and Elias. She closed the box quietly. Nathaniel said nothing, but Lydia knew. This story wasn't done unfolding. Not yet. Weeks passed, and the pieces of their new family slowly began to fit together with more ease. Nathaniel's presence became a natural rhythm, school pickups, weekend breakfasts, bedtime stories. The twins adjusted with the resilience only children carry, folding him into their world as if he had always been there. Their laughter was fuller, their questions deeper. One night, after Lydia tucked Eva and Elias into bed and kissed their foreheads, she returned to the living room to find Nathaniel assembling a toy robot Elias had left in pieces. He was focused, his sleeves rolled up, grease on his fingers. She leaned against the doorway, watching him. You're getting good at this, she said with a smile. He looked up, smirking. 6-year-olds make better engineers than most of my old team. She laughed, then walked over and sat beside him on the floor. For a moment they worked in silence, him adjusting the robot's wiring, her holding tiny screws. Then she spoke. I've been thinking about the bracelet. He paused. From my mother. Lydia nodded. It was beautiful. Thoughtful even. But I'm not sure that makes things right. It doesn't, he said, but maybe it's a start. She looked at him carefully. Do you want her to meet them? He didn't answer right away. I want them to know the truth. All of it. But only if it doesn't cost them peace. If she meets them, it's going to be on our terms. No manipulation, no shame. I agree, Lydia said. They're strong, but they're still healing. Nathaniel looked into her eyes. So are we. She reached for his hand. So, we take it slow. He nodded. We take it together. Just then, Elias called from the bedroom. Mom, my nightlight's blinking again. Lydia stood, sighing. It's always the nightlight. I'll get it, Nathaniel said, already moving. She watched him disappear down the hall, and something warm unfurled in her chest. This was no longer the man who had left Austin with ambition burning in his eyes. This was a father, a partner, a man who had chosen to step into the hardest truth and stay. The next morning, Nathaniel walked into his office and found another envelope on his desk. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Inside was a letter from Eleanor. Longer this time. Nathaniel, I was wrong. In so many ways. I tried to control your future because I never trusted the world wouldn't destroy you like it did your father. But you've proven stronger than I ever imagined. If you allow me to meet them, I promise to come as a grandmother, not a strategist. And I will listen. He folded the letter slowly, thinking. That afternoon he met Lydia at the cafe where they'd first spoken the truth. I want to try, he told her. Let her meet them. Just once. With us there. Lydia studied him, then slowly nodded. All right. But as they left the cafe together, a storm cloud gathered behind Nathaniel's eyes. Because if Eleanor crossed one line, if she hurt them again, he wouldn't protect her. He would protect them. The day of the meeting arrived on a soft Sunday afternoon, the kind where the world seems to hold its breath between spring and summer. Lydia had spent the morning trying to stay calm, checking the twins' clothes twice, prepping their favorite snacks, cleaning the apartment even though Eleanor wouldn't be staying long. The twins, thankfully, were blissfully unaware of the gravity of the encounter. To them, they were just meeting Daddy's mommy. Nathaniel stood by the window, hands in his pockets, scanning the street below. When he spotted the sleek silver car pulling up, his chest tightened. She's here, he said softly. Lydia gave a quiet nod and crouched down to the twins. Okay, guys, remember what we talked about. This is your grandma. Her name is Eleanor. She's coming to meet you and say hello. That's all. Elias looked up from his drawing. Is she nice? She's learning how to be, Nathaniel said gently. The knock came moments later. Lydia opened the door. Eleanor stood there, dressed in a muted grey blouse and pearl earrings, her usual aura of control softened by uncertainty. In her hands she held two small wrapped boxes, one blue, one purple. Hello, she said, voice measured. Eva peeked out from behind Lydia's leg. Hi? Eleanor stepped inside slowly. Her eyes darted to Nathaniel, who gave her a firm nod, then to the children, who now stood side by side, watching her curiously. I'm Eleanor, she said, crouching slightly. I'm your grandmother. There was an awkward pause. Then Elias said, You look like Daddy, but older. Eva elbowed him. You can't say that. Eleanor let out a breathy laugh. It's okay, he's not wrong. She extended the two gifts. These are for you, just something small. The twins took them cautiously. Eva opened hers first, a delicate silver bracelet with her name engraved in soft cursive. Elias's box held a miniature compass, its needle swinging in quiet circles. It always finds north, Eleanor explained, even when you don't know where you are. Nathaniel watched every movement, ready to step in if needed. But so far his mother seemed to understand the rules. Lydia gestured to the couch. Would you like some tea? Eleanor nodded, taking a seat with careful poise. The twins joined her, one on each side, their curiosity slowly winning out over caution. For the next hour they talked. Eleanor asked about school, listened to their stories, even chuckled when Elias described how Nathaniel once burned toast so badly the fire alarm screamed. Lydia sat beside Nathaniel, her hand brushing his. She's trying, she whispered. I see it, he murmured back. I didn't think I'd ever see this. When Eleanor finally stood to leave, she paused at the door, glancing back at the twins. Thank you, she said quietly. Then, to Nathaniel and Lydia, if you'll let me, I'd like to try again to be better for them. Lydia looked at Nathaniel. He nodded once. Then take it slow, Lydia said, just like the rest of us. Eleanor stepped out into the fading light, leaving behind not just the guilt of the past, but the smallest seed of something new, something that could still grow. The days that followed felt lighter, as if some invisible weight had been lifted from the air inside Lydia's small apartment. The twins asked about Eleanor often, where she lived, what she liked to eat, whether she'd ever been on a rocket ship. Lydia answered their questions with patience, filtering the truth through kindness. The important part was simple. She was trying. Nathaniel, too, had changed. He was no longer navigating his life like a visitor, stopping in and out of moments. Now, he moved through their world like someone who belonged there. He helped pack lunches, learned how to braid Eva's hair without tangling it, and even coached Elias through his first experience with multiplication, complete with ice cream rewards. One evening, as they walked home from the park, Elias tugged at Nathaniel's hand. "Do we have to go back to when it was just Mom and us?" Nathaniel stopped. He knelt down so they were eye level. "No, buddy," he said. "Not unless you want to." Ava chimed in. "I like now better. We have both of you." Nathaniel smiled, his heart swelling. "I like now too." When they got home, Lydia was waiting at the table with a folded piece of paper and a quiet look in her eyes. "There's something I want to ask," she said, once the kids ran to the bedroom. Nathaniel sat across from her. "Okay. I've been thinking about the last 7 years," she said slowly, "about everything we lost and what we've found again." He nodded, waiting. "I don't want to go back. I want to move forward, but I want to do it right. Together." Nathaniel leaned in. "Lydia." She pushed the paper across the table. He unfolded it. It was a document, a request for legal recognition of paternity. "I want them to have your name," she said, "not just on school forms, not just in conversation. I want it real. I want you to be their father in every way." His eyes filled with tears before he could stop them. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure," she whispered. Nathaniel rose and walked around the table, pulling her into his arms. She held him tightly, resting her head against his chest. "They deserve this," she murmured, "and so do you." Later that night, after the twins were tucked in, they sat on the couch with soft music playing in the background, the room lit only by a floor lamp and the glow of the city outside. Nathaniel pulled a small box from his coat pocket. "I've been carrying this for a while," he said, holding it out. Lydia looked at it, stunned. "What is that?" He opened it. Inside was a simple ring, a delicate gold band with 2 tiny stones, one purple, one green. "For them," he said softly, "and for you. No pressure, just a promise that I'm not going anywhere." Lydia pressed her fingers to her lips, tears shining in her eyes. "You really mean that?" "With everything I have," he whispered, and she nodded. Yes, not just to the ring, but to the future they were ready, finally, to build. Spring melted into early summer, and with it came the promise of new beginnings. Nathaniel's name was officially added to Eva and Elias's birth certificates, a moment both legal and deeply personal. When the judge signed the documents, Eva clapped and said, "Now you're really ours." Elias looked up at Nathaniel and whispered, "You always were." To celebrate, Lydia organized a small picnic in the city park, where everything had begun. Just them, no guests, no photographers, no extravagant displays. Only a blanket, a homemade cake, and 3 helium balloons bobbing in the breeze, one each for Eva, Elias, and a third, labeled family. As they sat on the grass, eating sandwiches and laughing over Eva's lopsided cupcakes, Nathaniel felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Peace. Not the kind found in tropical retreats or 5-star suites. The kind found in little moments. Sticky fingers, joyful shouts, soft glances across a picnic blanket. "I used to think I had everything," he told Lydia, watching the twins chase each other around the trees. "But this is the only thing that ever made me feel full." Lydia leaned her head against his shoulder. "Me too." They stayed there for hours, until the sun began to dip and fireflies appeared in the grass. The twins curled up in the blanket, drowsy and sun-warm. Nathaniel carried Eva to the car, while Lydia guided Elias, his eyes barely open, his hand tucked in hers. On the drive home, with the children asleep in the back seat, Lydia broke the silence. "There's something I've been thinking about." Nathaniel glanced over, curious. "Yeah?" She hesitated. "I want to leave this apartment. Not because it's bad, it's been our safe place for years, but it's not big enough anymore, not for all of us." He smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." "You were?" He nodded. I've been looking, nothing fancy, just a house, with a yard, maybe a tree house. She laughed. They'd love that. We'd love that, he said softly. By the time they arrived home, the moon hung low and the city was quiet. Nathaniel carried Elias inside, settling him gently in bed. Lydia tucked Eva under the blanket, brushing a curl from her cheek. Together they turned off the light and stood in the hallway, surrounded by silence and something even stronger, belonging. That night, as Lydia rested her head against Nathaniel's chest on the living room couch, she whispered, "I didn't know if I'd ever get to feel this again." "What?" he asked. "Home." Nathaniel tightened his arm around her. "You've always been home, Lydia," he said. She looked up at him. "Then let's build it together." Outside, the city glowed. Inside, their future began to take root, not as separate paths crossing briefly, but as one, finally, fully, forever. By midsummer, the move was underway. They found a small house on a quiet street with a wide porch, a magnolia tree in the front yard, and just enough space to build everything they'd never had before. The twins picked their own rooms. Eva chose the one with the biggest window, declaring it perfect for dreaming, while Elias claimed the corner room and immediately began planning where to hang his superhero posters. Nathaniel took a week off work to oversee every detail. He painted walls, built furniture, and even let the kids choose the color for their shared playroom. They settled on bright teal, loud, bold, chaotic, perfect. One afternoon, as they unpacked boxes, Eva came across a photo buried in one of Lydia's old albums. It was a picture of her and Nathaniel, taken years ago during their brief time in Austin. They were young, wide-eyed, standing in front of a food truck, fingers intertwined. "Is that you two?" Eva asked, showing it to Lydia. Lydia nodded. "Before you were born." Elias leaned in. "You looked so happy." "We were," Nathaniel said, kneeling beside them, "but we got lost for a while." "But now we're found," Eva said brightly. Nathaniel looked at Lydia and smiled. "Yeah, we really are." The next day, Eleanor visited the new house. It was her first time seeing them in their own space, chaotic, loud, full of life. She brought books for the twins and flowers for Lydia. She stayed quiet at first, observing, but slowly she stepped into the current of it all. She read a story to Eva on the porch. She helped Elias glue rocket pieces together at the dining table. And when it was time to leave, she asked if she could come again. Lydia walked her to the door. Eleanor turned to her, face softer than Lydia had ever seen it. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," she said, "but thank you for letting me try." Lydia nodded. "Keep showing up. That's all that matters now." Later that night, as Lydia and Nathaniel stood in the backyard, watching the twins chase fireflies with jars in their hands, Lydia said, "I think we're okay now." "We're better than okay," Nathaniel replied. "Still," she added, "some part of me keeps waiting for it to fall apart." Nathaniel turned to her, gently cupping her face. "Then I'll be the part that holds it together, always." Tears welled in her eyes, not out of fear, but out of the overwhelming relief that maybe, this time, it really was different. In the distance, the twins shrieked with laughter as Elias finally caught a firefly. He ran over, showing it off proudly. "Look, it's glowing!" Nathaniel knelt to see, his eyes shining in the golden dusk. "You know what that means?" he asked. "What?" "It means we're making light in the dark." And in that quiet, glowing yard, surrounded by second chances, a once broken family shone brighter than ever. Months later, autumn arrived, draping the new house in golden leaves and the scent of cinnamon from Lydia's weekend baking. Life had settled into something rare and sacred, a daily rhythm that no longer felt borrowed or fragile. Nathaniel had learned how to braid Eva's hair without help. Elias had taught him every rule of their made-up card game. And Lydia had let herself laugh more freely than she had in years. One crisp Saturday morning, the family walked hand in hand to the local community center, where the school was holding a Heritage and Family Celebration Day. This time there was no uncertainty, no pretending. The twins wore name tags that said Eva Green Carter and Elias Green Carter in bold letters. Nathaniel's name appeared beside theirs on the family entry card, not as a guest, but as their father. As the children rehearsed their part in a short performance, Nathaniel and Lydia found seats in the second row. Eleanor appeared quietly, slipping into the chair beside them, offering a small smile. She had been showing up, at holidays, at pickups, even at bedtime stories, and while the past could never be erased, she had chosen to be part of the healing. The lights dimmed, and the children began to sing. When Ava stepped forward to speak into the microphone, her voice rang out with confidence. "My family is strong, my family is brave, my family is made of people who never gave up." Elias joined her. "We didn't always know each other, but love found us anyway." The crowd applauded, and from the second row, Nathaniel's eyes filled with tears. Lydia reached for his hand. "I never thought I'd hear them say that," he whispered. Lydia smiled. "They believe it, because it's true." After the performance, the children ran off to join their classmates, and Eleanor turned to them. "I was wrong about so much," she said, "but you two, you built something real." Lydia glanced at Nathaniel. "We built it together, out of all the broken pieces." Eleanor nodded. "Then I'm proud to be one of those pieces." Later that evening, the family gathered in the backyard under the string lights Nathaniel had insisted on hanging. The twins roasted marshmallows while Lydia and Nathaniel sipped cider, wrapped in a shared blanket on the porch swing. Elias looked up at the stars. "Do you think we'll always be like this?" Nathaniel smiled. "What do you mean?" "You know, together." Nathaniel set down his mug and pulled them both close. "I think we'll always find our way back to each other," he said. "Even if life gets messy, that's what family does." Eva leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then I don't ever want to get lost again." "You won't," Lydia promised softly. "None of us will." And as the stars blinked overhead and laughter filled the yard, their story settled, not into an ending, but into something even more precious, a forever that had been earned. A home built not on perfection, but on truth. And the kind of love that rises, even after everything falls apart.